So the other day we were in English class, right? What are you smiling about?
Nothing.
What are you smiling about?
Bro, you just seem like a robot every time you do it.
How?
No, it's fine. Just go.
Alright, fine.
Just say something.
Okay, the other day we were in English class. I don't know how it got mentioned, but Ulysses got mentioned. Bro, what are you smiling about? Bro.
Okay.
Alright, fine. Retake. Stop smiling while I'm talking. Alright, bro. What are you smiling about?
It's just so fun. I don't know.
What's funny?
Something's funny. My humor.
Alright, bro. Okay. The other day we were in English class, and bro, you cannot laugh.
So hard not to.
Alright. The other day we were in English class, and
Yeah.
somehow the book Ulysses got mentioned, and she said that it was one of the hardest. Or my teacher said it was one of the hardest English books ever to read. And I remember talking about this between you and me about the other book he wrote, which he wrote 18 years after, Finnegan's Wake.
It was 16 years, I think.
16?
Around that time, yeah.
Yeah, and that one's way harder than Ulysses, right?
Yeah.
It's just
But the argument that most people make against that book is that it just doesn't make any sense.
yeah, because it's just like words on a paper.
Yeah.
So
But what if it's not?
yeah, what if it means something? I don't know. Who's gonna decipher it? Someone who spends that much time on the craft.
It's also written in 7 languages or something. But also, I feel like when you say someone that spends a bunch of time on their craft or whatever, but it's been more than 100 years since that book came out, and no one has done anything to...
What if no one's
do
just
anything
spent that
about it.
much time on literature since then? Think about it, because
No, I don't know about that, because there's all these sweats that, whenever I'm reading essays about Faustus and stuff, all these sweats that just write 20-page papers about Faustus.
I know, but that's way different than writing an actual thing, writing an actual story. Okay, who's the last great author? Like, think about it. Has anyone in the past 20 or 50 years been as
Yeah.
influential as someone like James Joyce?
Yeah,
Who?
the Game of Thrones author.
Okay, but are we comparing Game of
Yeah.
Thrones to Ulysses? Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
Game of Thrones is considered one of the best books ever written.
no way.
Yeah,
Of all time?
it's considered that, and then there's this other guy named Brandon Sanderson.
I know about Brandon Sanderson. I used to
Yeah.
read Brandon
Yeah,
Sanderson.
but some of his, I forgot what he has Mistborn,
Mistborn and
Stormlight.
Stormlight.
Yeah.
I've read both of them.
Oh really? You
Yeah.
finished Stormlight? It's
Yeah.
so long though, but I haven't read it myself. But Stormlight
Yeah.
is considered one of, if not the best fantasy series of all time.
Yeah, it was really good.
Same with Game of Thrones.
Yeah. But you think that compares to some other
don't know.
books that have been written in history, bro?
Potentially, yeah. Because that's what we have in contemporary.
What about
time.
Odysseus, the Greek epic?
Yeah, what about the Greek epic?
You think something like that compares to...
I haven't read Stormlight. It's just based off what I'm saying, or based off what I've been hearing about this books.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
I haven't read everything to compare.
I don't know. I feel like literature has declined. There hasn't been so many...
I feel like we say that, but then if you go back to Shakespeare's time, they probably thought Shakespeare was like the marvel of that time, and that the classic literature was the greatest, and Shakespeare was just he was doing what Marvel is doing right now, just mainstream stuff.
I don't
And then
think
now
so.
we look back at that time, and we're like, oh, this guy was super great.
I don't know about that one.
I think that's just the same. It happens everything. There's always, because every time someone says, if a new movie comes out and someone says this movie's the greatest movie ever made, people just will say this is recency bias, because the movies that were made in history are far greater.
Yeah.
But as time passes on, if the movie ages well, people can look at it as the best movie of all time. Because I guarantee when The Godfather came out, people didn't automatically say this is the best movie ever made. They probably said something about Citizen Kane or Casablanca.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. I wouldn't know. I didn't live then.
Well, I didn't live then
Should
either.
ask someone.
But I just assume that's just the case. That's just the way it is. Because
I think there's no way to say that affirmatively or...
I mean, I don't know, because if you look at the movie Whiplash, for example, the movie came out in 2014 and it's considered one of the best movies ever. But it is guaranteed when it came out, people weren't talking about it in the same context that they're talking about it now.
Oh. Okay.
They're just saying this is a really good movie. And then the discussion slowly shifts from this is a really good movie to this is one of the best movies ever made. I think the same is true for literature.
Okay. Well, the reason I said it for literature is because I just feel like people don't spend as much time on literature anymore, or even their craft. I mean, there's good authors, right? But now there's just so many distractions in the world. I just feel like no one would spend 18 years writing a book anymore, or has anyone
That's true.
recently.
I'm not sure. I haven't read much recent stuff.
Yeah.
So can't say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you think the books that they wrote back then were a lot more personal? Because now people are writing about, as we were talking about, fantasy, or they're talking, or the sci-fi is really big now
Yeah.
in terms of books and movies,
Mm-hmm.
and horror, I guess, a little bit, thriller for sure, the crime, all that crime stuff.
Yeah.
That's all really big right now.
I can't think of any old fantasy books.
Odysseus probably. The
That
Iliad,
was that fantasy?
or Odyssey?
Those
yeah.
weren't fantasies. Those were epics.
What were they? Epics, yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. But I feel like they're in the same vein, no?
No. You think people got more creative or imaginative?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even if you... I would still say... Well, fantasy is a genre. Fantasy doesn't mean it's not real.
Mhm.
It's just... It's just different.
Meaning what?
The world that they live in is different from the world that we live in.
Okay. But then what's the difference between dystopia and fantasy?
Dystopia is... The meaning of dystopia is... It's when everything looks all right. Or
But-
it's when everything... It looks like a perfect world, but
Mhm.
there's some dark, sinister undertones to it.
Yeah.
Like The
Okay.
Giver.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I'm still trying to think of any old fantasy books, and I just can't think of any. Epics are retellings of stories or
Yeah, that makes
supposed
sense.
real life things that happen. I don't know. Let me think. I think people might have.
Lord of the Rings.
How old is that?
How old are you talking when you say old?
Like older.
Okay, this is 19th century, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
But that's around the time Ulysses came out as well.
yeah. But I'm talking about older, bro. Like Odysseus.
Oh, at that time?
Yeah.
But that is the only literature known right now. And most of those books were burned down. So we just have no way of knowing.
Okay, but what about even before that? Shakespeare books aren't fantasy.
Odyssey was way before Shakespeare. Odyssey was written in BC times.
Yeah, I know. You're saying we don't know if there were fantasy books back then because a lot of them were burned down? Or that's the only literature we have from back then? Is that what you're saying?
No, yeah, that is some of the only literature we have from back in the Greek times.
Okay. You think we just don't have that much literature from
No,
back
we
then?
don't. All the big libraries burned down. The Library of Alexandria or whatever.
Okay, what about before the 11th century? There has to be a lot of books from then.
Were there?
Bro, look up how many books from the 11th century we still have or from before the 11th century we still have today. I mean, yeah, okay, but I don't know, bro. I feel like there might be a correlation between fantasy and recent times just because I think when we have more free time on your hands, because before people were so preoccupied with other duties, I think once you become less preoccupied with those things, then you have more time for being imaginative, like fantasy. Or even think of all the inventions we've made in recent times. I think that's due to, less worry about basic security.
I'm looking at all the oldest books to exist, and the oldest books that I'm looking at, they're just religious texts.
Yeah.
So the
So you think
Buddhist
there were
sutras
fantasy
or-
books from then? They just weren't preserved.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because they'd go for the religious ones. I'd say.
Look up oldest fantasy books.
Sure.
But yeah, on the term or on like while we're speaking about fantasy, why was Harry Potter such a big seller? Because when you think
The first, so yeah, you might be right. The first one it says was 1858, or the first
Yeah.
commonly considered fantasy book was
Yeah.
1858.
what book was it? Was it by what's his name? Something Werner,
No, that's by some guy named George MacDonald.
George MacDonald. Oh, okay. There's a guy named Werner, and he wrote about these books. I remember I was reading them in middle school, and it was these. I don't know if his name was Werner, but it was these crazy books, bro. And it might have been science fiction. It was science
Was it
fiction.
C.L. Werner?
Yeah, I think so. Did he write a book about?
The Witch Hunter.
No, there's a book where he was talking about how the fourth dimension was time, and this dude was moving on the plane of time. It was science fiction. It wasn't fantasy, but I just thought that idea was crazy to have come up with in whatever, like, it was in the 19th century, maybe late 19th century, but I don't know. I thought that was insane. I need to go back and read it because I don't remember much of it.
No idea.
Okay.
Zero idea.
Yeah.
It's not saying anything about that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea. There's also the other one. What's it called? A Wheel of Time or something like that. That's a famous book.
I think I've heard of it.
It's famous. I don't know when it came out.
Okay. There's a movie about it?
Yeah.
Or there's a movie based on it? Adaptation? You think we'll...
Oh. Okay, there's 3 books, but it came out, it's contemporary. It came out in 2009 to 2011 or something. There's 3 books.
Oh.
And Brandon Sanderson apparently co-authored the last one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brandon Sanderson.
I know a guy that read all 3 of these books, and he said it's super good, and it's the best series ever made.
Really?
Yeah. But I don't know if he's read other classic literature.
Yeah.
But on the topic of classic literature, the reason I brought up fantasy is that a lot more authors are writing in sci-fi or horror or thriller or some other genre that's not, whatever they had back then. Because, I mean, a lot, texts I think have just been, or books in general, have been, the further you go back in time, the more religious they are.
Mm-hmm. Because religion is so important, and it makes sense that would be what's preserved.
Mm-hmm. But also, the books that were written in the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries also had a lot to do with religion. In the English class that I'm in right now, the Faust tradition, where the basic concept behind the class, it's based off Faustus, who apparently sells his soul to the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these have to do with religion a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, it was called the Bacchae,
Mm-hmm.
and it took place in ancient Greece.
Mm-hmm.
So this is written in the BC times. This is written in 3000 BC or something, and they somehow preserved it.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. Pages
3,000.
Pages have been lost. 300 maybe.
Yeah.
But pages have been lost and stuff, but the main story has been remained pretty intact, and they translated it over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the Greek god. And he comes over, and then the main guy says, or not the main good guy, but whatever, the antagonist. It's the god comes in human form to get the people of the city to believe in him. But the king of the city says, no, he doesn't exist. Because there's a whole history related with that. But that's a pretty religious thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
it has to do with a god directly. And our teacher was even saying that going to that play and watching that play was an act of worship of God in those times.
Oh, interesting.
And then the second book was Faustus, which
Mm-hmm.
it's the most conventionally well known about that. But that has a lot to do with religion. It has a lot to do with Christianity.
Yeah,
and
because
you won't understand a lot of the hidden meaning behind the book if you have no knowledge of Lutheranism or Protestantism or whatever Faustus was raised in, and the opposition between England and the Roman Catholic Church at the time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the conflict at least goes over your head if
Mm-hmm.
you don't have knowledge of these religious circumstances.
Yeah.
And what book did we read next? Oh well, Heart of Darkness doesn't really have anything to do with that, even though it's written in the late 1800s.
You know what I was reminded of? I was reminded of this story when you were talking about the Greek thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story that when there was a flood, right? And this guy, he was saying, oh, so someone save me, or he was praying to his God. He was saying, God, please save me, right? So then someone came in a boat, right? They're saying, okay, let's go. We can get out of here. He said, no, I don't need you. God will come and save me. And then after that, I think someone came in a helicopter or something, and they said, we can save you. He said, no, I don't need you. My God will save me. And then at the end, he just died. And then he transcended into whatever upper realm. And then the God said to him, I came in so many different... He said, oh, why didn't you save me? He said to the God, why didn't you save me? I prayed for you, and I was he was a devout to this God. And God said, "Oh, I came in so many different forms. You just didn't choose to accept the help."
Dude, you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the Christian medicine or whatever. What are those people called?
Scientists, Christian scientists.
Christian scientists, yeah. Where they get their head battered in or something at a football game. They just kneel and start praying to God instead of getting that guy treatment.
Yeah. Also, you have something in your eye.
Do I?
This eye.
This eye?
Yeah.
Is it gone?
Yeah. But yeah, Christian scientists. I remember that one Family Guy episode where okay, there's this. I think Peter was, or no. Yeah, I think Stewie was sick or something. It was a joke, and then Peter was just saying, or someone, they had a Christian Scientist neighbor or something. I forgot the exact details of the episode. That's how I found out about it. Yeah, that's crazy though. I don't know. Is that the strict interpretation of the Bible? I wonder what's the proof against Christian Scientists.
What? I don't know. I don't think there's so much freedom to interpret in the Bible.
Yeah.
Similar to Hindu texts.
Uh-huh.
I think, based off what I've heard at least, the Quran is the only one that directly says. I mean, Christianity, they have some principles where they said you can't absolutely break this no matter what. But a lot of the stuff, it's the same in which the people are supposed to look at the Bible and learn from the mistakes that the characters make.
Yeah.
And how they go against God.
Yeah.
That's the Old Testament. And then the New Testament is about Jesus.
Oh.
And his teachings and stuff.
Okay.
But, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just the way that you interpret the Bible, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on, Because I'd also tend to agree that the help of God can come in a lot of ways. He doesn't have to, a light doesn't have to come out on you and you just float up in the air or something.
Yeah.
I think the boat and the helicopter and all of that.
Yeah.
That was just a thing.
Yeah.
But there's some people that believe otherwise, clearly by that story.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, but I think the idea of the story was that he was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but there's some people that believe in that way.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know.
Should they be punished for it? I mean, maybe that's how they interpreted it.
Yeah. The Bible doesn't specifically say. I don't think so, at least. It's been a while since I've read it.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
I don't think so.
Sacred Heart days.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's been a few years at this point.
Yeah. Anyways, back to literature.
But the next book that we're about to read is called Master and the Margarita, and I'm pretty sure it's something about how the devil comes to Soviet Union in 1950 or 1919 or something.
Okay.
And he just messes around there.
Oh.
I haven't read it yet, but I've heard from a lot of different people. It's a really good book.
Is it related to Rasputin?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't think. Maybe.
It might be. I think a lot of people thought he was the devil or something, just because of how he didn't die and the supposed powers he had. It was around that time period, I think, right? The Russian.
No, it has nothing to do with Rasputin.
Okay. But
also, a lot of the Russian literature I've read has a lot to do with religion as well.
Mm-hmm.
The old Russian literature.
Yeah. Oh, like the brothers.
The brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment.
Uh-huh.
All the Dostoevsky, and then there's even this book has a lot to do with religion as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that book is insane. It goes in on religion. The entire book is supposed to explore religion as a topic.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, what was it? Or maybe explain the story.
The story?
Yeah.
It's kind of a complicated story, but I'll explain it.
Yeah.
It takes place over the course of, I'd like to say, a week or 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But the entire first half of the book just sets up the characters. There's 3 brothers. So there's one father
Mm-hmm.
named Fyodor. And then he has 3 sons, Alexei, Ivan, and Dmitri. I think those are the 3 names.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'll just keep this bottle. And then, so these 3 guys, they're all fundamentally different in the way that they act. Mm-hmm. Dmitri just follows his heart and he follows his impulses. Mm-hmm. Ivan is supposed to be the super intelligent one, and he's very super well respected. Mm-hmm. And he's very well educated, mm-hmm. and he's super well respected amongst everybody in the community. Mm-hmm. And then Alexei is a super religious, super devout, super innocent. They use innocent a lot to describe him.
Mm.
And that's the order from oldest to youngest. And this father, he's just a super greedy guy, and he's just this asshole pretty much. And he's the combination of the worst traits of all of them.
Okay.
And so that's the first half of the book spends a sweet amount of time setting up all the characters and their interactions and stuff like that. And in the second half, immediately, they find out that the dad got killed. And that when the dad got killed, it's they try to figure out who did it, and immediately they arrest the oldest brother on suspicion.
The intelligent one?
No, not the oldest was the one that follows his heart.
Oh, right. And the middle is the intelligent.
Yeah, the middle is the intelligent one. And the main contrast really has to do with the intelligent one and the religious one. It's not contrast, but they share conflicting opinions. But it's worth a read. And then there's something about how this guy's trial is the trial of humanity.
Whose trial?
The guy that they arrest on, because it's very clear that he's innocent from the beginning.
Okay.
The third brother.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that he's innocent. I think, or at least a lot of people argue that it's not, and that they specifically leave out certain events, because there's this whole thing about him and his dad being in love with the same girl or something, and she's.
This is the one that follows his heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a whole thing about him and his dad.
And he's the oldest.
Yeah, he's the oldest.
Okay.
And there's a certain days in the book where it just focuses on him. It switches around perspectives from the three brothers. And there's days that it just focuses on him, and they specifically leave out certain events. So people that have read the book argue that, the book says that he killed the person. But I'd say that it's pretty obvious that he didn't. But the way that he's put on trial, all of that, it's supposed to, I think, symbolize a trial of humanity as well. Whether,
the innocent people are being put on trial?
Yeah. The innocent, that person himself. Because he's also he's flawed, but he's innocent.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that entire thing. But it's I guess something about sin. And then the younger brother and the middle and the youngest brother, their entire thing, and how they explore this murder and how they explore the aftermath and the consequences and the trial and everything. That's all. It's supposed to showcase various aspects of humanity, I think.
Oh, okay.
And then it's hard to explain. You should just read the book. But it's basically about a father and his three sons. The father gets murdered, and the oldest son gets put on trial. And then they explore situation in their community and a lot of stuff. It's a long book. Okay. And it mainly has to do with the interactions between the people. Because there's a lot of stuff where it just shifts away from the main plot. And the religious one goes and gives this begging family some money or something like that.
Yeah, to characterize him.
Yeah.
When was it written?
1865 or something.
Oh.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
It was the author's last book. He was apparently supposed to make a sequel focusing on the intelligent brother. But he died immediately after, or soon after.
Yeah.
Which sucks. Because the second book probably would have been better. If it builds up the first book. And that guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Russian literature. That's interesting. I've never read any Russian literature.
Yeah. That and Crime and Punishment are the only ones that I've read. And I've read some of Notes from the Underground. Notes from the Underground they're all three of these are written by the same author, named Dostoevsky.
Mm-hmm.
And Notes from the Underground was his first book, and it was written while he was imprisoned. And they say he's wrongly imprisoned. Or I read the introduction for In the Brothers Karamazov, and they say he was wrongly imprisoned and he wrote this book.
Mm.
But it's a collection of short stories, I think.
Oh.
And there's one slightly longish story between them.
Yeah. Speaking of short stories, I'm in the short stories class, as you know. And what we've been reading, or what we read at first, was this collection of short stories from around the world. And then after that, we explored one of those short stories in detail. And I think the one I was reading about was this one by an Indian, I don't know if she's Indian American or maybe Indo-Canadian, author, and it was about the Air India bombing in 3 years after 84, 87. But short stories, I think, are such I think they're so like captivating because there's, especially nowadays, there's people who just they don't want to do I think sometimes in books there's the grit work of getting, especially we were talking about Brandon Sanderson books, especially in those fantasy novels, there's a little bit of grit work in there that where you have to understand all the characters, the world they live in, the details, and you have to understand all of that in order to get the later reward, which is the story. So short stories, I think, are really good in that, where you don't have to go through that. And I think most short stories pertain to the real world. We haven't encountered any fantasy short stories yet.
Yeah, even the short stories that I've read, they have nothing to do with fantasy or anything, because I feel like it just takes so much time setting up the world and setting up setting and everything.
Yeah.
That there's just not, or they'd have to make it a long story at that point.
Yeah, we were even learning about the progression of short stories. In the very first part, which is exposition, I think, or the details, it's supposed to be super short in a short story. Because our last assignment in this class is to write a short story, so we were learning about that. But yeah, I think that way short stories are really good. But I think they just don't have the same effect as a novel, because of when you're reading that novel for so long, and then sometimes when you're reading a novel, you even think about it after you're done reading it, or you're thinking about it, or I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about, oh, what is this character gonna do next, or something like that,
Sure, yeah.
So I don't know, I enjoy them, but I think they don't have the same effect as a novel. And especially, okay, so recently I read a collection. So after that examination of one short story, we read this collection of short stories by an author, and the collection I read was this collection called Nocturnes by an author named Kazuo Ishiguro. And a bunch of these stories take place in the same piazza, but they're not related, as in the characters, it's like the stories are occurring and one story is literally occurring on the other side of the piazza, but they don't interact at all, the characters.
Yeah.
There's two stories where the characters do interact, but other than that, so I thought that was really cool because, it's like, I don't know, I just thought that idea is so interesting.
Yeah.
And apparently it's not something uncommon either.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to structure the story. And I feel like we have, I don't know actually, because back in the day, if you look at old literature, it's fairly straightforward. Fairly straightforward in a lot of areas, but especially the structure, I think, was very straightforward. And as storytelling has developed, people have been starting to put more effort into the structure. Because, for example, the book that we just finished reading in my English class, it's called Heart of Darkness, and the story initially starts with 5 men sitting on a boat that's going off into the Thames River, and they're looking back at the British city. And then the narrator, so these 5 men, they're the accountant, the lawyer, the director of companies, the narrator, and Marlowe. And Marlowe is the only one that's named amongst all 5 of these men. And the other 5 they're just there to serve their purpose. And so the narrator starts talking about how great the River Thames is, and how, all these famous legends in Britain, and these famous warriors, and all these knights, and so much has happened, and so for the British people, right? And this river carries a lot of history. And then Marlowe starts talking about British conquest, and then he compares it to the Romans' conquest, and he says the idea of the British conquest or not British, but just European colonialism in general. He said it's a little bit different because, we have the idea, or the Romans just wanted to conquer us for our land and our resources, but we have the idea that we're going to civilize the people that we conquer. And then he breaks off into a story, and he just describes all of his experiences when he goes to Africa. It's unnamed. There's no names assigned to a lot of the things. The only 2 named characters in the entire novel are Marlowe and this guy named Kurtz, and no one else is. They're just given descriptions, like the manager or the manager's uncle, or Marlowe's aunt, or Kurtz's fiance, but they're never explicitly named.
What is the? Go ahead.
But here, to the point about the structure, the names is a little bit of a detour. But the point about the structure, Marlowe recounts his experience, and then at the end, occasionally he takes pauses, and then it's just the narrator starts describing Marlowe again, but it quickly breaks off into Marlowe's thing. So the bulk of the novel takes place in Marlowe's perspective. Only really the major parts are the first 5 pages and the last paragraph are the only parts that take place on the boat. But as a class, have been thinking a lot about why this narrative structure was actually implemented. Because what's the point of putting 5 people on a boat and having him say the entire story and then just ending it off with one little paragraph?
Yeah, that's really interesting. In the short story collection I read, the author is known for making his first person narrators unreliable.
Oh,
so
really?
yeah, so it's not even their memory. They just have such little self-awareness sometimes that you just don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I remember in one story, the guy was just like, you couldn't even tell what was going on, because I mean, you could tell what was going on, but he would build up to something, right? He would be building up to something, and then he would just jump to the next event. So he was a musical artist, and he was looking to join a band in London, right? And he was building up all these stories, and then it's just suddenly he moved in to his sister's house in some country place in England, and then something like that happened again. And so I think, yeah, I don't know, that's interesting, because if you have one character telling or retelling the entire events of the story, I wonder how reliable that is.
I don't know. The teacher had us consider the unreliability of the narrator, because the main thing, or the ending of the book in this book, or this famous movie called Apocalypse Now, which was made by the same creator as The Godfather. It adapts this book, but it moves the context from Africa to Vietnam. Or it's not exactly the same. The story is really different, but it's a loose interpretation of this book. And the main thing, or the biggest confusing thing at the end, was whenever Kurtz dies in Africa, he gets sick from an illness. Spoilers. But whenever Kurtz dies in the book, he gets really sick from this thing in Africa, and he starts saying the horror, and then Marlowe, the horror, and then Marlowe, unable to watch, what's going on, he just leaves. And then later, some African guy comes and tells him that Kurtz died. And presumably these are Kurtz's last words. And at the end, whenever Marlowe meets Kurtz's fiance after a year or so after he comes back from Africa, he says, or she asks him what were his last words. And he said the last word that he said was your name. And that's the end of his narration. And then he says, so the entire book from the beginning at least, or in the beginning of his narration, he talks about how he hates lying.
Interesting.
And he says that, that lie at the end he told because she couldn't handle the truth, or, it would break his heart to tell the truth, or it would ruin the perception of Kurtz, because Kurtz, he was a super respected guy in Europe, but when he went to Africa, he basically just became a savage.
Interesting.
And he thought that telling her what actually happened in Africa would ruin her perception. But the teacher had us consider, in the context of the book itself, is what Marlowe said actually a lie? He thought he said a lie, but the teacher was saying at least that the reason the frame narrative was put into that book in the first place was to have the narrator and the director of companies and all these 5 men on a boat. They look upon their city as a city of grandeur at first, but after they hear the story, they look back at the city and they say, it felt like we were looking into the heart of darkness. So the thing that it's suggesting is that, the European colonials, they described these Africans as savages. and then they basically just sold their soul so they can commit atrocities or whatever. They had to just numb down that human part of themselves
Yeah.
so they could commit these atrocities, or that's the common belief. But I think that what the author was trying to argue was that all of this dark desire is just part of us as humans, this animal instinct,
Yeah.
and that the notion of civilization kind of hides it. So when we're amongst other people or we meaning Europeans, but when people were amongst other European people, they were held accountable for their actions, right? There's police and all that stuff, still to this day. And once Kurtz, this well-respected gentleman in European society, was thrown into this African thing where, he viewed it as tribal and uncivilized. He adapted and became tribal and uncivilized as well.
Okay.
But the reason why he was saying that the lie was actually not a lie, and why the horror itself was actually the truth, or when he said the horror was your name, or Kurtz's last words were the horror, but Marlowe says that the last words were, the last word that he said was your name to the fiance. They're saying that the people that are in Europe as well are also part of the horror. They're also part of the uncivilized, and they're also part of that animal instinct.
Oh, okay. And so wait, so the argument from that you mentioned before this, or the commonly viewed argument, was what again?
Commonly viewed argument in terms of what?
Or what they commonly view the book as conveying. You said that you think the author's arguing everyone has an animalistic instinct.
It's mainly, there's a lot of references to Faust and stuff, but I'd say a lot of people kind of just refer to that lie, at least at the end. They just refer to him as, the author has been accused of misogyny and stuff like that a lot, but he's saying that women are these innocent and delicate, or people say that he views women as innocent and delicate creatures, and that they can't bear the truth. So it's the man's responsibility to keep it from them. Oh. That's I think the common interpretation.
Okay, but when you were talking about he sold his soul, or
the soul part, it's these European people, to civilize the people. They had to sell their soul, so they can be humanely capable of committing these atrocities. Because no human would do that to another human.
Yeah. Oh.
And I think that still rings true because Marlowe, the name of Marlowe, the character, it's the author. It's a direct reference to the author of Faustus, whose name was Christopher Marlowe.
Okay.
And then there's also other little references here and there.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think both are true. I think he's just saying the devil just took them over.
Uh-huh.
But he's saying that the devil has the potential to take them over even in European civilization as well. And I think that's the purpose of that narrative. Because it addresses that from the author's point of view, or the narrator's point of view, rather, should I say?
Yeah.
Because the narrator sees the city as something else at the beginning and the end of the story.
What did he say at the end about the city?
He said, looking back at the city, it felt like looking into the heart of darkness.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up was because you were talking about the unreliable narrator.
Uh-huh.
And, in Marlowe says that he lied. Okay, so going. But Marlowe says that he lied. But the argument was that, what if he just didn't actually lie at all? And this, in the context of the book, that was the truth.
Yeah.
It's weird to think about.
It is weird to think about.
Because it's the narrator and then also the structure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was still thinking about that idea of them selling their soul to justify what they did to other people.
Yeah. I mean, it's not explicitly stated anywhere.
Yeah.
But if you look at the names of the characters and the references made to that other book, where, the main story is about the guy who sold his soul to obtain all this power.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gross.
Yeah. Could make some references, but I'm not going to.
That's all right. Don't even say that, bro. We'll actually get, I don't know, something bad. Or no way that can be a good thing. Also, speaking about the devil, there was this. We saw this play of Faustus, and I actually I thought it was super interesting how the devil was depicted in that. He was he was just this weak man. You good?
Yeah.
All right. He was just this weak man that he couldn't even walk around, and he had to be carried by 2 dudes at all times.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of?
What?
And I don't know if you remember this, but in the 4th Harry Potter movie, chill. Okay, when they had to give birth to Voldemort was this little like scrawny baby, and he's just bones, and they had to throw him in this thing to make him full again. But yeah,
Yeah.
and he was basically that can also be interpreted as selling your soul, and it is because when they made a Horcrux, what they did was they took a part of their soul and split it, and the only way they could do it was by killing someone else.
Oh yeah, right. That's how it was, right?
Yeah.
And he made I remember.
Yeah. And every time he sold his soul, his face would get more and more warped, and that's how he ended up going from a guy to that white thing.
Yeah, that ugly white thing.
Yeah.
Have you read the books for Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, my favorite book was always the Half-Blood Prince.
Yeah,
But
same.
The movie didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because the movie focused on the irrelevant parts of the book, I think. Because the book was mainly about Dumbledore and Harry Potter and their experiences. Because they were up to some cool stuff. They were finding the Horcruxes and stuff.
Yeah.
But the movie just cuts all that out completely.
Yeah.
And it goes really deep into Voldemort and his backstory and the Horcruxes.
Yeah.
But the movie just cuts that out completely instead, and chooses to focus on the love story between like Ron and Hermione or something, and Harry and Ron's sister.
Mainstream marketing.
But yeah, it was. I don't know. I feel like that's where they really messed up with the movies. But the rest of them were good.
Yeah.
Order of the Phoenix especially was a good movie, because the book is considered the worst of the series, but the movie's considered the best.
Yeah. The movie was good. I think they condensed it because the Order of the Phoenix is the longest.
It's the longest one. Yeah.
They condensed it well.
Yep. I don't remember that much about Harry Potter. I watched it a ton when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I still remember what happens in all the movies.
Huge Harry Potter guy.
Huge? Not really. I know some bigger fans.
Yeah.
But
how did Harry Potter become such a popular book, bro? We should talk about that.
That is a good question.
She's the richest author of all time, right?
Is she?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
She made $1 billion just off her books.
Yeah. It's just the marketing.
Oh, and her movies, probably.
The movies.
Yeah.
But why did the movies become so successful based off other book-to-movie adaptations?
I don't know. I think, for her, she kept original or whatever, creative liberty. I don't know. No. So basically, the directors weren't allowed to take creative liberties. The contract was that she had to approve every decision made.
Yeah, but
so she kept the movies original to the books.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Remember the Percy Jackson movies?
Yeah, they're awful.
They flopped
awful,
because the director was allowed to take creative liberties, and he messed up a lot.
Yeah, he definitely did. I remember I watched those movies as a kid, and I got I didn't get mad. I wasn't that.
It's just like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, I was surprised because there was this thing at the end of the 3rd book where they brought that one tree girl back to life, but they did it at the end of the 2nd movie.
Yeah,
they just cut through the entire second half of that movie just to get to that point, and it made no sense at all.
Yeah, what are they doing? But
the first one I don't remember was that bad. It was just bad in terms of visual effects, I think.
Yeah, Disney's redoing Percy Jackson.
Yeah, I saw.
And Annabelle is black, and Grover's Indian.
I saw that. Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand why. I don't know. I feel like that's just. I don't know. It's not virtue signaling, but there's definitely a better way to put it.
What is virtue signaling again?
Like you try to appeal to everybody.
Oh, right.
Okay, like I don't know.
Like you're trying to be morally right or whatever.
Yeah, you're trying to be politically correct. Yeah. And you try to appeal to everybody.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It's
politically. Yeah, try to be politically correct.
Politically correct.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example, but I don't know. I don't want to say it. But yeah, I feel like there's just no point, because even there's this new thing about them casting the black girl as Little Mermaid. Mm-hmm. But at this point, what's the point? Because if I don't know, a white girl played Black Panther's sister, it would not go over the same way.
Yeah.
I feel like what they should do in terms of the movie industry is that they should create new ones.
Yeah, create new black characters like Black Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther was a good one, and then Disney could create a ton of black princesses, bro. I just don't know.
Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, I just don't know why they're just.
That was a good movie.
I've never seen it actually, but I don't understand why they just They just cast the black actors as the white characters.
Yeah.
Even though the history of the film industry has been white.
Yeah.
There's no need to just remake these movies over and over again.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
make new ones.
Yeah.
Because, and also, actually, I don't know if I want to get into all that, but they should definitely make a movie about Mansa Musa as a guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of African history as well. I feel like they can make some good movies out of.
Yeah. Mansa Musa, man. He's the guy.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't want to get into all that though?
Oh, I was just gonna say there's just I go to the bathroom, but I feel like the film
The
industry.
blanket will block it out.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, it's really far away, but I feel like the biggest. I don't know. Even in a lot of movies, like 12 Years a Slave, for example, the movies that are mainly focused on black people, I feel like they're a lot. They have a lot to do with slavery and stuff, or slavery and the civil rights. Mainly.
Yeah.
But it just never anything about their history.
Yeah. It keeps him down.
Yeah, I feel like Black Panther was a step in the right direction. It's
Yeah.
a good movie.
Yeah. It was. It's rare these days.
Yeah. What great mainstream movie.
Yeah.
Dude, it's it's a good movie. But I actually thought Killmonger, the way that they wrote him was just crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's similar to how, or I don't know, he was definitely way more right than anybody in that movie. And the only reason he's a villain is because they wrote him that way. Or they wrote him just to make sure that he's not too sympathetic. Because his cause and his motive and his reasoning for everything that he does, it's all right. But then the writers probably thought, oh, this guy he's way better than our main character. How about we just, make him choke an old woman or something, so we can show that he's the bad guy and he needs to be killed.
Wait, what did he do?
So his entire thing was that. So he's
No. He did what to an old
he
woman?
choked an old woman.
When?
He choked Black Panther's mom. I think. I remember seeing that scene.
Maybe. I don't remember. But
Because if you think about it, he came into Wakanda and he said all this stuff. And then the people of Wakanda pushed back against it. So the main characters pushed back against him. And then he legally won his way to challenge for the throne, or by the rules of Wakanda. And he beat T'Challa.
Mhm.
And then he started doing, all this stuff that he's doing. And at the end, whenever T'Challa comes back to beat him, he had literally admits that he was right. The policy of Wakanda literally gets changed after Michael B. Jordan's character gets beat, and it changes in the way that he wants it to change.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think his thing was about opening up the resources to the rest of the world.
No, bro. He wanted to ship weapons to the world.
Did he?
Yeah.
I forget. I feel like his entire thing was that they have all these resources, but they're not doing anything to help the world.
That makes sense. And I think what they did after that was they used their resources to help others. But what he wanted to do is he was shipping in the end, he was shipping all those weapons across the world. And he wanted the people to rise up he wanted black people to rise, or the oppressed around the world to rise up.
Did he? Was that it?
Yeah.
I don't remember. But I remember him being pretty compelling.
That's compelling, but I didn't think it was that compelling because the other guy's reasoning, or T'Challa's reasoning, was that if you open up the borders to the world, then they'll just pillage you like they pillage everyone else.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw that movie in 2018, and I don't think I've seen it again once. But
Yeah.
I haven't seen it again very often.
Mm-hmm.
But
because even in the movie, the American officials, they just wanted their technology so bad. Remember?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like the oil people.
Yeah, the oil people get a lot of flack from the rest of the world too.
Yeah.
Because of their culture, their ways, But
No, not that oil people. I mean, how America just goes to war anywhere where oil is.
Oh, to get the oil.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That already makes sense for profit, pretty much.
We should talk about adaptation from literature to books.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
Or from literature to movies, you mean?
Or literature to movies, yeah. It's our class next semester.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. What the only books to movies?
Because we're talking about Percy Jackson and Harry Potter.
Yeah. But the only books to movies that I remember reading, it's the Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, all this mainstream stuff, Hunger Games. I've read both the books and seen the movies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think is there book for Fight Club? There might be.
I don't know.
I don't know either, but there's books for there's books for The Godfather. I know some people in our school read the book and seen the movie. I've only seen the movie. And there's other stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. And also, I guess I've read a bunch of manga that got made into an anime. That's similar. Not really.
The Mahabharata show.
Yeah.
That's an adaptation.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, it's not. It's not that different.
They adapted it.
Yeah.
It was a long show.
Yeah.
They adapted the entire Mahabharata.
Yep.
To episodes.
It's done now, right?
What? Yeah, it's been done.
All right. Good. I mean, I used to watch it as a kid. But I didn't watch the whole thing. I just tuned into specific episodes.
Yeah.
At times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just had no idea what was happening.
And Three Idiots. Three Idiots was a
3 Idiots was a book.
5 point nobody or something.
Something like that.
5 point someone. I don't know.
5 point some. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Chetan Bhagat.
Yep. I don't know. A lot of people that have read the book said the movie's just very bad in comparison, and Slumdog Millionaire as well.
Really?
Yeah, but a lot of people said that the movie missed out on a lot of the actual aspects. I don't know. Not a huge fan of Slumdog Millionaire. Just makes India look like a shithole.
Yeah, I think there's a reason they gave an Oscar to it. They wouldn't give an Oscar to a book, it's like what we were talking about earlier. They wouldn't give an Oscar to a movie that, upholds our people.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, yeah, the main
Lagan won Lagan was the last Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
It was about the British oppressing.
And then there's another one too, right?
Mother India.
Yeah, and then even
and
RRR,
Salam Bombay.
even RRR.
Yeah, and RRR.
That's
crazy.
All these movies about Indian people
crazy.
rising up to the British.
No, it's all these movies about them being oppressed by the British.
being oppressed by the British.
They won't give an award to just Indian people thriving in India.
Yep. Well, what can we do?
Yeah.
3 Idiots, I feel like, should have gone there. It's a great movie.
3 Idiots is so good. Yeah.
But, I don't know. They even, in terms of adaptation, I feel like in a film sense, a lot of it is lost.
Because...
Short, runtime. Runtime and also narration.
Yeah.
This is it's you can't do good narration in book to movie adaptation. Or you can't do it in a way that it flows.
Yeah, because you have to put something on the screen while they're narrating.
Yeah.
And then...
Or their internal monologue or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just have this guy...
sitting there. Thought
while
bubble.
somebody else is... Yeah. I don't know. I feel like even if you're going... I mean, I saw this anime once it was adapted from a book. And to compensate... They did some weird director thing. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I just won't go and get into that. But... a lot of I feel like the manga to anime is the smoothest in terms of source material to adaptation I've ever seen in all industries.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's easier because it's comics, but also the books to anime have just generally been better.
Yeah. If you think about it, I wonder when the first adaptation was from a book to a movie, because movies have been around such a short period of time compared to books, and there was just no intent for books ever. I mean, books were adapted into plays, right, for a long time, but movies are just this completely new concept, and I wonder, especially with the first adaptation, what it was like, adapting a book into a movie.
In 1899, Cinderella came out, and that was the first.
Oh. But Cinderella's in a novel. It's like... Cinderella's a story,
Yeah. Oh, and then he released some movie called King John, which is loosely based off Shakespeare works. It's the same guy. His name's George Méliès. Méliès something.
Interesting.
French, I think.
Yeah. It's crazy how old princesses are, bro. I know it's such a random thought, but I've just...
Snow White?
I know.
Snow White was the first colored animated... Or it's the first colored movie, technically, if you're counting animated movies as real movies.
Yeah.
It's the first colored movie of all time.
I know.
Came out in 1917 or something.
No, why are they so important to us, princesses? They've withstood so many things. Yeah, I know. That's insane. It's not religious or anything. It's just... They're just princesses.
I don't know.
What do they mean to us?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe...
I guess it means a lot to maybe young girls, but...
Yeah. I mean, my sister definitely grew up on a lot of princess stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's no, I don't know. I don't want to say feminine ideals, but also I feel like a lot of people in modern time, because of woke culture, have been turning against princesses.
I
Because
know.
I remember but I just feel like it's princesses are such an innocent thing.
I
There's
know.
no reason to turn on them.
I know. Such an uncontroversial topic,
Yeah, I
man.
know.
Why do you have to hit on princesses? They have all kinds of princesses now too. They have black princesses.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's racially inclusive, man.
Yeah.
And but also, I feel like, or not. I feel like, but I've seen this thing
They
with.
have macho princesses. Remember Brave?
Oh yeah. She was a hunter and stuff. She was cool.
Yeah.
But the actor for the Snow White in the live adaptation Snow White movie has literally been speaking out against Snow White the entire fucking time, bro. She was saying, I don't know, Snow White is made by these white men in 1990 or in 1899 or something. But it was just so dumb. I just didn't understand. There's no point.
It's a story, man.
Yeah. Just let it be told. And if you really want a new story, just make a new story.
Yeah.
Just let these go, man.
Yeah,
Let
just
them
make a new
remain
one,
untouched.
yeah. Stop hating on the concept, the idea.
Yeah.
Wrap this episode up, bro.
Yeah,
We
no,
just jumped all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we kept the consistent topic of literature.
Yeah. we
But
did.
how princesses stood the test of time is a crazy thing. Because if young girls look up to princesses, and what are
we
young
gonna
boys
title
look
this
up
episode? Literature and Princesses?
to? I'll figure it out. But if young girls look up to princesses, then what are young guys supposed to look up to?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I'm thinking action. Superheroes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But superheroes are a generally new thing too.
Yeah, they are.
But they're way newer than princesses. Princesses were made in 1790.
Look up what was the first superhero. It can't
It's
be that
Superman
old.
in 1920.
No way. Look it
Yeah.
up. Look it up.
I know. This is off the top of my head. I know this is a fact.
Okay.
But sure, I'll fact check.
The concept has to be older though. Just a person with super abilities.
Oh, it was 1938, so it's a little bit even after what I said.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. What did guys look up to before that?
I don't know.
Princes.
Dads, probably.
Kings.
A king, but no, there's no stories of kings.
Yeah, there are. There's
Like
so many
what?
stories of kings.
Yeah,
Think
but
about
not,
the Indian kings, bro.
Yeah, but not as, I don't know, publicized as
I don't
the
think princess
princesses.
stories were that publicized back then.
I
either.
really think Disney made them popular.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Disney probably. I mean, yeah, superheroes. Even before the Marvel movies came out and stuff, I was always a
Yeah.
pretty big superhero guy
Yeah.
or superhero child. You know, I wore my underwear inside
It's
out.
because of comics.
Because of Superman. Oh no, I wore my pants and then I wore my underwear
Yeah.
on top of it.
That's so dumb.
Hang on.
Just walked around like that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I don't remember.
All right, bro. I think we should wrap this episode up.
In conclusion, what is it?
In conclusion, what?
All right, man. It was so nice to have you here.
Literature.